Good morning. The Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research and Planning is calling the virtual confirmation hearing to order. The time is now 10:02 a.m. Thursday, March 4th, 2021. Notice of this morning's virtual hearing was provided via email to senators, stakeholders, and the local media on February 24th, 2021 for the 5-day notice and March 2nd, 2021 for the 48-hour notice, thus meeting requirements of open government law. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues that are here today. Thank you to Senator Joanne Brown and Senator Tello Taitigui. Thank you for joining me. The purpose of this virtual confirmation hearing is to receive testimony on the executive appointments of Mr. David R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency Board of Directors and the executive appointment of Ms. Miss De Oro to serve as a member of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency Board of Directors as well. The rules of conduct for this virtual hearing is as follows. The host of this hearing will mute all participants until called upon by the chair. Virtual background should not be utilized during this hearing, and participants' face must be visible at all times. When called to speak, please ensure that you're unmuted and that you're speaking into your microphone. Members of the committee wishing to speak may indicate the desire to do so in the in-app chat feature. The order of questioning will begin with the chair and then followed by senators. Individuals testifying shall be first recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, and personal inferences as to the character motive of a senator, individual testifying is not permitted, and any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal. So now to begin our agenda. The management of Guami-P shall be vested in the board of directors consisting of 9 members to be appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the legislature. The agency's policies established by a board of directors, and the board meets approximately once a month, and meetings are open to the public. Guami-P board of directors serves as the appellate body. Any citizen who believes he or she has been aggrieved by an action or decision by Guami-P administrator can request a hearing before the board. Another important duty of the board is that they shall appoint the administrator to administer matters of Guami-P under the supervision of the board. And the board should also appoint a deputy administrator who shall not be the member of the board and shall not have the right to vote. So now to begin, the first item on our agenda is to receive testimony on executive appointment of Mr. David R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guami-P Board of Directors. I'd like to give the floor to Guami-P, who's represented by Nick Rupley, to provide testimony on behalf of Mr. Duenas. Welcome, Mr. Rupley.
Hi, House Day, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Good morning, senators of the committee. I'll be providing Walter Young-Girl's testimony in support of both Ms. Moñeka De Oro and Mr. David Duenas. It's a combined testimony, so I guess I'll skip to the part about Mr. Duenas, if that's okay.
Yes.
Guami-P is pleased with Governor Leon-Guerra's nomination of Mr. Duenas to the Guami-P Board of Directors, and the agency is in support of his nomination. Today, our administrator also asked that you and your colleagues stand in support of Mr. Duenas. Our administrator does have a few brief remarks about both of the individuals, but we'll just proceed with his remarks on Mr. Duenas. So he goes on to say, Mr. Dave Duenas' passion for environmental protection is apparent. He regularly participates in the public hearing process, and his commitment to serving our people was exemplified with his bid for senator in the 36th Guam legislature. Mr. Duenas is also comfortable not only as an advocate, but as a policy-driven communicator. This apparent with his role as a talk show host, especially with Man, Land, and Sea. And he's often spoke about a variety of aspects in terms of policy that weren't just environmental driven. So his input and his ideas will be welcomed with the diversity that we already have on our board. So those are the things that our administrator wanted to convey to you and the committee this morning.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So are you presenting also testimony for Miss De Oro as well? I'd like to invite you to do that. If there's
Sure, okay. Our administrator also goes on to say, since joining the Guami-P Board of Directors in 2019, Miss De Oro remains a staunch advocate of the furthered advancement and preservation of our Chamorro heritage and our culture as a mother, an educator, and a proud daughter of Micronesia. On at least more than one occasion, Miss De Oro has shared her passion for the protection of our environment and often cited that our collective culture and environment as one Micronesia and one Marianas are tied together. With her involvement with the Women's Earth Alliance, the Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, Ms. De Oro could certainly add depth to the way our board will shape the agency's policies moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ripley.
Thank you.
Now I'll invite the nominees for their testimony, beginning with Mr. Duenas. You may present your testimony.
You want me to testimony to myself?
Yeah, so yeah, you're given the opportunity to provide, I guess, a reason for our body to support you for your nomination.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you for everyone in attendance. Nick, and I guess Senator Brown is there. Yeah, I'm Dave Duenas, and I'm very honored and happy to be appointed by the governor to the EPA board. As Nick had conveyed earlier, I've been actively involved in environmental issues for many years. And yes, I do a radio talk show, Man, Land, and Sea, discussing different issues involving the environment, everything from wildland fires to coral reefs to illegal trash dumps. And I think as a board member, I can definitely assist the board in making some much needed crucial decisions when it comes to regards to the environment. And again, I'm just thrilled, really happy and honored to be nominated. And I hope the legislature will see fit to confirm me as such. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duenas. So I think I would maybe hold off the questions until we hear testimony from, so we're going to combine the testimony. So we're going to hear also testimony from Miss Moñeka De Oro, so regarding her nomination. So welcome, Moñeka, and you have the floor.
Buenas, half a day, everybody. Susma Toru Ifenatan Mizu. I'm really grateful to be here this morning and to be reappointed to the board of EPA. I've been out for about a year of getting my reconfirmation set up through COVID. Has been kind of taken a while, but I'm really happy to become back into the board as an official. In my official capacity, I had learned so much about the inner workings of EPA and the regulations and the mandates that they have to adhere to. I have also really enjoyed my time getting to know the other board members and the employees of the agency, and I look forward to continuing to fulfill the mission of the Environmental Protection Agency and also see through that the EPA gets its new home and really just bolsters a better relationship with our community. And I've been doing so much work on the environmental end with my nonprofit, Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, in trying to see a just transition into the future, especially with the threats of climate change, and trying to get food security and food sovereignty to be taken seriously on this island. And we are also just developing a web series on waste on our island and the plastic crisis on our island. And all of these things just sort of align with my professional endeavors. And I really hope to continue to, like Nick said, deepen the work of the EPA and bring better connections between the agency and the community. And I look forward to doing so in my capacity as a board of directors for the Environmental Protection Agency of Guam.
Okay, so Masi, Miss De Oro. So I guess now we're going to open the floor to questions, beginning with myself. So the Guami-P is mandated with the task of maintaining high quality environment to guarantee an enjoyable life for all people at present and in the future. and with managing environmental degradation of the quality of land, water, and air by any pollutants, including all physical, chemical, biological agents. So this question's for the both of you. I guess I would begin with Dave. How will your appointment to the board contribute to the agency's ability to meet this mandate?
Well, first and foremost, I would ensure that the guidelines, I guess, that are set federally that we follow here in Guami-P, to first and foremost get educated on the what is mandated from us in order to protect all those you just mentioned. And it's going to be a collaborative effort, dialoguing with the rest of the board members to come up with the best possible solution to address each and every one of those environmental issues that our island face. Thank you.
Okay. So Moñeka, would you like me to repeat the question if you can respond to that? So the question was, how will your appointment to the board contribute to the agency's ability to meet the mandate of protecting our environment and preventing environmental degradation?
I ask a lot of questions in the board meeting. I feel like when I'm there, the meeting maybe goes on a little bit longer than usual because I'm not afraid to ask questions and just seek clarification. And I feel like those necessary conversations or when I'm in those meetings, I feel like just the clarifications and the necessary, I don't know if it's pressure or just deeper conversations about what exactly is going on when it comes to, for example, a notice of violation and what the process of notice of violations may be, and ensuring just transparency throughout the entire through any board decision makings that we have. Also, I'm just completely committed to ensuring that the future generations have a viable, livable island, that they're safe and is peaceful. So I do this work, and so does Dave. Like, we do environmental protection work on our own as a passion and for free, and we would do it in any capacity that we find ourselves in. So it's something that we're both very proud to be a part of, and definitely take that responsibility very seriously.
Thank you for that response. So just an additional question for Miss De Oro. So what do you think were some of the biggest challenges that you saw in your past term on the board that needs and that requires perhaps more strategic work on the part of legislature or the board itself?
I spent a lot of the first year, a little bit over the year of my board appointment, just really learning about what it means to be on the board, to sit on the board of directors, and what the Environmental Protection Agency does, and what its mandates are, and who the people that are fulfilling that role are. So for me, it was more of a learning experience of really just trying to get my bearings and learn the ecosystem that is the Guami-P. And I really look forward to using the next few years to deepen my involvement in ensuring so I didn't really see any challenges. It was more just the learning curve for me, to answer your question. And some things that I really wanted to take on personally was the recycling issue on the island, and the waste management, and even the issues of illegal dumping. And I feel very, especially with the work that I'm doing at Micronesia Climate Change Alliance in regards to recycling and in regards to just educating people on the waste management crisis of our island, I think it just will help to educate our community. And I feel like education is something that's really important on that we as a board and as an agency, we can definitely put more resources and more in doing the educational aspects for our community of environmental protection.
All right. Thank you so much, Moñeka. So Dave Duenas, the second question. So you're aware the plastic bag ban went into effect this year. How can you contribute to the agency's mandate to enforce this ban?
First and foremost, to ensure that the retailers, big or small, follow the law that's been passed regarding plastic bags. And it did kind of get off to a rocky start, but I think eventually it'll smoothen itself out. But right now, as you know, the plastic bags will be banned, and their degradable bags are currently authorized to be used for a specific time. But I would just ensure that the board with EPA keep on top of it and ensure that public education, public outreach on the. So that was what I think was one of the problems in the beginning is a lot of the retailers, mom and pop stores included, were not exactly very sure of what the law actually meant. So I think better public outreach, public education on the bill, and the banning of the plastic bags is definitely needed, and I would ensure that will occur.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duenas. Miss De Oro, so I guess the same question. So how can you contribute to the agency's mandate to enforce the plastic bag ban?
One of the things that I was proud to do last year was I engaged with over 200 high school students in different Zoom meetings like this, educating them on how to make their own free, easy, free, and do-it-yourself reusable bags. And we've also created videos on how to do that too with Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, which has had over a few thousand views. So educating the people on that it doesn't have to be hard, it doesn't have to be expensive, you don't have to buy anything to make these bags. And when things are safer, even hold those workshops at mom and pop stores, or even do it as a fundraiser with high school students, and really engaging the youth to take the charge on the plastic issue has been really worthwhile and fulfilling for me, because it is something that the youth are really interested in taking action on. So I think just doing the community work that I'm doing can help enhance the plastic bag ban
Great
legislation.
All right, so thank you for that response. So I guess the next question is for Ms. De Oro first. What is your vision for a long-term solution to plastic pollution and some of the challenges to recycling that the island has experienced recently?
Oh gosh. So a vision for long-term, Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, with the help of the Guahan Humanities, is going to be launching a web series, and which will also be aired on KUAM News in the next month for Earth Month, in which we spoke to 20 professionals in waste management, activists, and business owners who are all working towards waste reduction of not just Guam, but also in the CNMI and throughout Micronesia. So I have a pretty good regional understanding after all of these conversations of what the plastic crisis is, and just coming to that understanding is a huge step. So helping to create this web series and educate the community is definitely a step one. There has to be some more policies around polystyrene and styrofoam, like the FSM has just passed, that I hope to see as a legislative action in the next few years to get rid of the plastic or the styrofoam. Also educating the community on ways that we all need to take responsibility. It's really incredible to go. We went and visited the Lazen landfill in Dundon and got to see the amount of waste that's brought in every single day, and got to see the composition of it being mostly plastic and mostly single-use things. So the more that we educate, especially the young people, to make more mindful considerations as consumers, the more helpful it would be in the long term. But policy definitely plays a role, education plays a role, and it really requires a huge cultural shift in the ways that we consume, most especially our food. And doing that one person at a time, one household at a time, is really important. Additionally, Micronesia Climate Change Alliance is recycling. It's a small scale recycling solution. We've already been able to divert in the past month over 100 pounds of plastic number 2s and number 5s. And this is a small scale solution that we're piloting. Already the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability is going to buy machines of their own of the precious plastics recycling machines that they're going to be having at their makerspace. So we hope to continue to see this precious plastics recycling industry and polymer plastic industry grow on Guam, so we can create a circular economy around distribution and creation of the waste into newer things. So it's not just single use. So when you are done with your Dawn soap or with your Gain or Tide liquid laundry soap, it turns into something else, and we give these things a longer life, and they can be turned into benches and to things that are used to our community. And there's so much innovation that's happening, and I'm really excited to continue to do that work for the short term and the long term.
That's a great vision, but just what is the board's role in this? What do you see the board's role?
I think with the recycling revolving fund, I know that there's some funds available for public innovation and for grants to be given to community organizers or organizations and nonprofits and to mayor's offices. I feel like the board has a role in ensuring that innovations, wherever they may be, are supported and are definitely given access to with some support from the board and from the agency itself.
Okay, just a clarification, the recycling revolving fund has not been modified.
Yeah.
It's still, the two programs is the Mayor's Council, the abandoned vehicles, the priority goods cleanup, as well as the recycling stimulus. So there's no grants, it's not authorized to provide grants as at this time.
Okay, so hopefully we can work on that as a board to get the new regulations finally, because they did look really. I know that your office put a lot of work into it, and a lot of other people were collaborating on the new regulations. So hopefully that is something that we can look into and see through.
Mm-hmm.
That includes things like the community grant initiatives.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Duenas, if you can maybe also tag on to that question. So what is your vision for a long-term solution for the plastic pollution challenges to recycling, and what is the board's role in this? Oh, sorry, you're unmuted. I'm sorry, you're muted at this point. Dave?
I'm sorry. Monica hit a lot of the key points. One of them, really happy. Her group and Monica and her partner are doing that small scale reusing and shredding and of the plastics. And I think we need, I believe Austin Shelton's group at the University of Guam is doing similar, and they're going to be purchasing machines as well. I think we need to promote that big time on the island, long-term solution. If we can expand that type of program that Monica and Island Sustainability are pursuing, I think we can expand it to the region as well. Not so much just for our island, but for everyone, so everyone can benefit from it. But the very long term, plastics come in many forms. Everything from, of course, our plastic bags, our water bottles, and even tires. They're a form of plastics. But long term, we got to get rid of it. And I don't know if recycling will be the sole solution to it. I have a vision. It's somewhat controversial, but I think it needs to be done eventually. And I'm talking about waste to energy, where you burn the trash, burn the plastics, and we only produce so much tonnage of trash in our island, but we built a waste to energy facility to scale that would accommodate the amount of trash that we do generate, and that can supplement the power plants. That when we have a new power plant is going to be built, and that would supplement the power. At the same time, do away with having to dig a hole in the ground every 5 to 8 years when the cells are filled up. We just cannot keep on digging holes in the ground and stuffing the trash in there. I think we can get rid of a lot of the trash, especially plastics, in particular. And again, the programs that Moñeka and I'm Sustainability are pursuing in shredding and reusing plastics and turning them into useful items to recirculate into our economy, which would generate much needed funds for our island, as well as put the plastics to good use. Benches were mentioned. You can make it's countless number of products from reusable plastics. And what the board can do, we can ensure that when people such as entrepreneurs want to go out there and pursue something in that same line, that the process of applying, going through the what do you call that? There's the one stop permitting center. We got to make it a lot more user friendly so people won't have to go through a lot of red tape to get this. And again, Monica and her partner Michelle, they are living proof of what they had to go through. It's a tedious process. So what the board can do, we can provide testimony, or the board through the director provide testimonies to the legislature, and promote streamlining the one-stop process for permitting for environmental issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duenas. So as you know, last budget cycle, the G3 initiative received an appropriation against the rules of Recycling Revolving Fund for $500,000. What is your position on that? This question is for Dave.
Is that the recent 1.3 million that was released to the mayors to the recycling?
The $500,000 that went to G3, Guam Green.
Oh.
Yeah, what is your position?
Anything we could do, if we got the financial resources to assist, then they should. Then again, you got to look at it as a board. We would definitely put our heads together and prioritize which ones and the amounts that will be distributed out to these different programs. But in short, there's a priority. You got to pick and choose which ones would be more of a priority. Thank you.
So, thank you, Dave. So, same question for Moñeka. What is your position on the $500,000 that went to G3?
Yeah, it's a really interesting predicament that I was in personally, because I am a G3 partner, and I am on the board of the EPA, and I was kind of caught off guard when the money was gonna be pulled from the RRF funds, and I didn't think that was the route that was going to be taken to fund G3. I know that the CGRAN and UOG Center for Island Sustainability and G3 initiatives are very worthwhile for our community. And for me, I was saddened that environmental programs were being pitted against one another when both and all are equally important and essential for our island and their and our future. So for me, it was just, I definitely see the value in G3, and I definitely see the value in the Recycling Revolving Fund, especially in the new sort of language for the program. And it was just a point of just seeing different people within the environmental community pitted against one another when we're all really on the same team was unfortunate.
So would you support a continuing appropriation, even if the rules and regs are not updated?
I think that would have to be thought. I would have to think a little bit more about what exactly that means. And I think the way that it all went about was just really confusing. And I don't know. I at this point, I don't think I can make a decision about that.
Thank you. Mr. Duenas, same question. Would you support a continuing appropriation of G3, even if it goes against the rules of the Recycling Revolving Fund? You're muted right now.
I'm not 100% versed on the whole program, but the 3G, I apologize. I just recall that's the Guam Green Growth, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. With them being funded and the funds taken, I believe, from the EPA funding and given it to the on green growth. Again, any and anything we can do to assist. It's if it benefits our island, it needs to be done. But again, there's priorities. There's going to have to be criteria that has to be met to validate funding the 3G. But in short, it'll be a collaborative effort from the board to decide if how we want to implement that type of process.
Okay. Thank you. Next question, regarding revenue streams, what solutions can you offer to the shortage of resources Guami-P is facing? What changes to existing programs can be implemented to address this shortage? I guess this question's for Dave first.
Okay, great question, Senator. Thank you. One of the things I personally got involved in here in my village, I live in Dedido, and there was a residential property here in the village of Dedido that I'll take a picture and send it to you. But basically, it occurs all over the island. Residential property is actually a home in Dedido in the village that is turned into it's like a miniature appliance dump site. And EPA has been called out. They got cited. So as far as generating additional revenues for EPA, I think I followed up with the mayor of Dedido at that particular property in question, and they did in fact get cited by EPA. It's located in Dedido Village, but the business or the illegal what they're doing at that property is still ongoing. I don't know if they actually collected any fines, so I think EPA needs to do a better job in citing these type of violations and ensuring that the penalties or the monetary penalties are collected in order to enhance the revenues of EPA. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Moñeka, the same question. So what solutions can you offer to the shortage of resources Guami-P is facing? And what changes to existing programs can be implemented to address the shortage?
I too agree with Dave that there needs to be a little bit more aggressiveness on the point of citing violators of illegal dumping and collecting any sort of penalties that occur with that. Also, and that will also help to curb illegal dumping in the first place. I personally have seen people illegal dump and come across illegal dumping all across the island while hiking. And the more we do to ensure that, because that's a crime, and that those things are punished, then the less people would want to do it. So I agree with Mr. Duenas and just being a little bit more aggressive about stopping illegal dumping and having that be a way to raise revenue. Also, I know with with big violators of environmental harm, there is a lot of fees that could be collected in those instances. And I'm not too sure about the finances of EPA and the collection process of fines, but ensuring that we collect the maximum amount of penalties for big violations of EPA regulations is also important. And insofar as being more creative, there are a lot of new funding opportunities with environmental protection, given the new administration of the United States. With the Biden administration, there's going to be a lot more funds available, and just kind of ensuring that we avail ourselves to as much as we can, both federally and locally, is ways that I hope to increase revenues for EPA.
Okay. So last question. This goes to Moñeka. What are your thoughts on the topic of environmental justice? And what are the most critical threats to Guam concerning environmental justice?
Oh gosh, this is a nice loaded question. There's a lot around environmental justice that's really important, especially in moving away in the ways that we need to, as a world, move from an extractive way of being, from burning, dumping, and using energy that's very extractive and very oppressive. To being a more regenerative and more aligned with our indigenous values. Also, and environmental justice requires us to look at past harms and to find ways to right the past harms. One of them being, one in my mind at the forefront, is the audit dump issue, which is also going to the Supreme Court. So all issues regarding the harms from the military, as well as is a big concern for environmental justice, and just continuously looking at the root causes of the toxic systems that continuously want to prioritize profits over human lives, and the ways that we support the systems that are life-giving of our planet is also really important to continuously do. And that also all requires a real shift in humanity's consciousness and in our cultures and in the ways that we treat one another and treat all of the other creatures that we inhabit this beautiful planet with. And doing work around the just transition on a national level with Justice Alliance has really grounded the ways that this looks and becomes a reality on the ground. From food sovereignty to finding community-based solutions around the energy crisis and around the waste crisis. They're all, even though it's such a big, huge issue, there really can be small actionable steps. And I think the role of the EPA is ever evolving when it comes to justice. For a lot of people, government is just the government agencies and regulations are just a check mark off to continuous devastation. And the more that we put people who are conscious of these oppressive systems into places of power, I think that's like you, Sabina, I think that's a really really good step in the right direction to ensuring that justice is at the center of the way we move forward, and at the center, and the people who have experienced the injustice are at the center of ways to find solutions out of that crisis as well.
Thank you, Moñeka. Mr. Duenas, same question. So what are your thoughts on the topic of environmental justice? And what, in your opinion, what are the most critical threats to environmental justice on Guam?
Just environmental justice, as Moñeka had mentioned, using the order dump and the closure, and now we do have litigation going on in regards to trying to get the U.S. The military to pay for the closure and all the other stuff regarding the order dump. But I think we need to be, as a community, if not the world, to be more proactive than reactive. That would minimize a lot of the injustice that is being done to our environment. So again, be proactive. Don't wait till a problem occurs. If you see it happening, act on it. Don't wait. Because once you be reactive, when you're reacting to the situation, is basically the problem already is there and existing, and you're just reacting to it. So again, to minimize any injustice to our environment, we need to be more proactive, and we need to ensure that when we see something, that old saying, see something, say something. Well, in this case, see something, say something, do something, and then you would minimize a lot of the injustice, and that give a break for our justice people and have to litigate this the problems that they have and that has to be adjudicated. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Dave. Actually, I have additional questions. So one of the most important roles of the board, should an administrator be chosen or need to be chosen, that's one of the roles that the board it plays. It does not go to the legislature for review. And so your role as a board member is very critical in selecting who heads the agency and who's going to administer all the regulatory requirements to protect our environment. So I just want to, maybe a question for Dave. So what qualities do you look for in an administrator and a deputy administrator?
Definitely have some not mandatory, but have some background in the environmental issues. Of course, if he has degrees in that particular field, that would be something that would be very appealing to me as who I would place my confidence in. And, just a go-getter, someone that definitely is a go-getter, able to think outside the box, able to implement programs and projects immediately if funding allows to be do so, but to make it happen. But in short, in selecting if the board, EPA board, is tasked with, as you mentioned, selecting the administrator, the director of EPA. Definitely be proactive. Definitely be positive attitude, and definitely transparency with the community and its federal partners. I think that's our good attributes to a good administrator or director of EPA. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Same question to you, Moñeka. So what qualities and do you look for in an administrator for Guami-P or deputy administrator?
I have really found working with Walter and with Michelle a very good relationship and experience, and I really do appreciate the qualities and the things that they bring to the agency, and as well as to any board meeting that they're at, and they're at almost every single board meeting that I've ever been to. So just their commitment and their openness has always been something that I've appreciated. But in general, when looking at someone to lead an agency or to lead any group of people, I look for people who I like to see people who are transparent, who are compassionate to the needs of the people that they work for, and who are passionate about the work that needs to be done, and who really find joy in the work, even though it's challenging. People who make it a safe and peaceful place to be as well, and who are just take the weight and the responsibility of protecting our environment incredibly seriously, and who come to the table with ideas and ways to make the programs more robust and more and definitely people who are supportive of those who are doing the groundwork as well.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question before I open the floor to my colleagues. I appreciate their patience. Conflicts of interest. Do you have any conflicts of interest, Moñeka? And do you see your roles in the nonprofits that you engage in? Do you see a potential conflict of interest?
I don't think that there are conflicts. I definitely think that there are alignments more so than conflicts, because the missions are very similar. I guess if there were any decision in the future about grants that aren't necessarily available at the moment, but maybe in the future, that would give some funds to nonprofits around recycling or around any issues around environmental protection. I would excuse myself from any board decisions that may include that. But as of right now, and from my experience thus far in working with the board, I don't see that there's any conflicts with the nonprofit work that I'm doing.
Mr. Duenas, do you have any conflicts of interest?
None whatsoever. I do have a lot of interest, but I know I have no conflict of interest. And like Moñeka mentioned, if anything in the future props up that I'm involved in that might be in conflict with being a board member, then I would do the same and recluse myself from participating or voting on any such thing that in the future. But at this time, zero. I have no conflict of interest. Just a heck of a lot of interest in helping out our environment and our people of Guam and our island. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so now I would like to open the floor to my colleagues for questions. Senator Joanne Brown, you're recognized if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and certainly thank you also to the nominees, Mr. Duenas and Mrs. De Oro, for stepping up to the plate to accept your appointment to serve on the Guami-P board. This year actually marks 30 years since I was appointed the Deputy Administrator for Guami-P, so I've obviously had a an interest over the years on how EPA operates and how aggressive it is with regards to enforcement. I don't hear as much these days from Guami-P. I'm sure there must be a lot of activity, but it's not as evident publicly in terms of the role of EPA. And I did want to ask first, Nick, they're representing the administrator, what the current staffing is at Guami-PA. If I can, is he still online? If I can ask Nick Lee that question.
Hi, good morning, Senator. I'm here.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good to see you. I believe we're hovering maybe between 50 to 55 personnel in total. Obviously, that spans throughout all the different programs. It's no secret, especially something that the administrator and the deputy administrator discussed at the prior board meeting about the agency's need to look into succession planning with some of the vacancies that we do have and some of the projected vacancies that are going to occur because of retirement or personal reasons. So yeah, there's definitely a need for staff in the agency. Something that the administrator and the deputy administrator did convey in that board meeting was the competition for salary. So for example, if you have your EHS1 who's probably at an L or a K pay grade, who doesn't have a whole lot of opportunity for advancement, and you see an environmental contractor who's going to pay more for a set of skills that might be below an EHS, then that individual is going to do what's best for them and their family, especially when it comes to the salary and benefits. So that's always going to continue to be a struggle. I'm fairly certain that even in your tenure with the agency, you probably saw that as well. But yeah, that's something that we did discuss with the board in terms of succession planning for positions in the agency, and that ranges from your environmental health specialists. We did talk about chemists, inspectors, and biologists. So those are the things that we'll be working closely with our ASO and DOA to get the announcements out. Obviously, BVMR does have to clear budget on those things, so those are going to occur, just so that we can kind of bridge that gap with some of the personnel shortage in the agency.
Nick, thank you. I appreciate your input. I mean, when I was at Guami-P and started 30 years ago, there were totally 52 employees, and the 51 and 52nd employee was myself and the administrator. So it does tell us that in spite of the continued growth and development on Guam, we've not had much growth at all with regards to Guami-PA and its ability to do its enforcement. I mean, I recognize that, we're always going to be competing with outside interests with regards to talented people that have an environmental background. But there are those, as some of your senior members there, that probably will be retiring in the near future. There's commitment as well to Guam, and there are a lot of good people that have that commitment that we can hopefully encourage. But as you mentioned, certainly getting those announcements out and getting those individuals with those capabilities on board are very critical, because without the ability to have any teeth to enforce, the wide range of environmental authority, because EPA does quite have substantial enforcement capability. But if it's not used and it's not pursued and sometimes not magnified, and I relay this to the board members, if it's not magnified so that people actually know that if they do commit a serious violation, that not only will Guami-PA follow through, but it will pursue anyone else who goes down that road, even though you don't have the full capability you would love to have. You prioritize those areas and have consistency so people know that you're not an agency to mess with. And I've not felt that in quite a number of years, that level of presence and credentials publicly. And I relay that to the board members, that that's something that needs to be looked at, because Guam has continued to grow, violations continue to exist out there, and the government's behind on the 8 ball. And I know the agency, even with limited resources, can operate far more effectively than what I've seen in recent years, because I don't see that presence. And, I'm not being overly critical saying, hey, in our time we did it this way, because everyone has a different burdens and responsibilities on their plate. But the issues pretty much remain the same, and the violations are out there and we see it. But it's always a question of, who's speeding up the process, or who's slowing it down, or, it's just another day at the office and we're just, moving along. And I would love to see Guami-P, take its place as it should, particularly now that we have a community that as the years have gone on, I see a lot more environmental consciousness. And listening to you, Miss De Oro, as a young person coming up, I see how very passionate you are about what you believe. And you don't just believe in it, you actually show and exercise in who you are and what you do to promote what you believe in. And I think that's really commendable. I love that. I love hearing you. I hear the passion in your voice, and I appreciate that, because I think that's what we really need out there to get things to the level of where we would like to see them. Our ecosystem is so small on Guam. Anything that adversely happens can affect all of us. And as the years go on, I continue to worry about the northern Guam waterlands because of the growth in population and activity. And inevitably, that's going to end up in our water system. And our outreach to go out in the field to get that type of inspection and work done, I doubt, and I don't know. You can correct me otherwise. I just don't see it. I don't feel it, and I don't hear it. And probably certainly for Mr. Duenas and Miss De Oro, I think those are the things, down to the basics of really looking at the role of Guami-P is really getting out there in terms of regulatory enforcement to address these issues so corrective action can happen. And we're not at the receiving end of when the damage is already done and maybe in some cases can't be rectified, that we're trying to get out there and do something. I don't like what, we're being ambulance chasers and we're waiting for the incident to happen where we can be proactive. So I appreciate you, Nick, your insight, but it does tell us that, the agency really hasn't grown in the past 30 plus years. And while the time I was there, we dealt with tremendous growth and development of like 5 golf courses. We had Menengan Hills in construction, quite a number of the hotels now that filled the gaps in between the Hilton and the Reef Hotel and the Old Okura. But I just think there's very much a need because you do have the authority, you have the power. It's not like we have to pass more laws to address your capability of enforcement. That, I definitely would like to see a big greater presence on the landscape for Guami-P. But thank you, Nick. I do want to ask Mr. Duenas, you brought up an issue that certainly is been of interest to me for goodness now going on 30 years, this whole issue of incineration and your input that of course, it doesn't make a lot of sense that we're digging new cells every few years and filling it with more trash. I know we looked at looking at other means of waste diversion, and certainly now that Guam Solid Waste has announced they have less markets available to take this recyclable material to. I just would ask you if so the only thing that would make me cautious about voting for your confirmation probably would be that issue, because there's a lot more involved in it than simply incineration and reducing the waste stream to ash. The politics behind the incinerator issue, the players behind it, and the agenda and the history of how a company got what a so-called license for incineration that are claiming that they're the only ones that the government of Guam can engage with if it ever chooses to move forward with incineration. That's why there have been bills and laws over the years to prohibit the government of Guam from pursuing such an activity. And I know there are constant interests of the same company to try to get those laws changed so that they can get what they believe is rightly their license to incinerate. And just to give you a little background, a number of years ago, a company called IEEI got a loan from Guam Economic Development Authority to do this very issue that was being looked at back then to reduce the waste stream. They never paid back that loan. But they got the license. And we had another company that came along, bought that license, and it's on that basis and ongoing negotiations with the government that they believe they are the sole company to do incineration. So it's not like we're going out and shopping the market and finding out who now has the best technology, because there's a lot of criticism as well with incineration. It's not environmentally friendly. And a number of jurisdictions where incinerators are being closed down. So I just want to get a little more of your feedback on that and to the degree you have knowledge of those issues, because that does concern me. I am not supportive at all of moving forward the company that's come forth here to want to be in charge of incineration for Guam and essentially control the waste stream. Because where there's money involved, there's a lot of interests at the table, and sometimes those interests, and certainly in this case, in my history, has not been in the interest of our people. So I wanted to get a little more feedback from you with regards to your comments on incineration.
Thank you, Senator. Good question. And yes, you're so right. There is years past, a company that Waste to Energy that had a contract that was signed with the government of Guam, but that's more, again, that's out of my league. It's above my pay grade. It's strictly a judicial policy. It's in the courts. And you mentioned that this particular company wants to be the sole company to do this. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at it in the big picture, the environment. We need to do something in regards to the plastics and all the different trashes that we can, in fact, incinerate instead of putting in the ground. It's nothing to do with a single company, in my opinion. It's strictly that's again, that's totally up to the courts. That's it's up to the legislature to make policy to address that. But this particular issue that you brought up is strictly already in the courts, and that's for the courts to decide. I'm not involved in that at all. I do know of it. Well, my sole interest in it is the fact that we can't keep digging holes in the ground and spending upwards of $30 million every 5 to 10 years. We need to be proactive. And I totally agree. If it's just one company that's dictating they want to do it, then again, that's for the courts to decide. My sole goal is to reduce the amount of trash that we have done placed in the ground. That's going to affect you mentioned the waterlands, our aquifer. Of course, it's mostly in the north, but still, it's an issue. And again, I am totally 100% in favor of it doesn't have to be one single company. It can be whoever company the courts or our legislature, our policymakers decide. So again, hopefully I answered your question. Thank you, Senator.
Well, I hope also you'll look at other technologies and see if that's feasible. I mean, and looking at the plastic proposal that as Miss De Oro mentioned, there are other options that are being looked at for
True.
plastic recycling, for example. If we could look at other options to the waste stream, because right now, yes, it's a highly political and has been one for 30 plus years. But at the same time, I'd be concerned if I have a member of the existing board that would be used as an advocate for that they would be more than happy to quote and reference that, we have Mr. Duenas who's on the Guami-P board who endorses incineration to play into their agenda, because, we talk about 20 or 30 million dollars a year going or every few years to dig a new cell at the landfill. But we're not talking about how much it's going to cost to incinerate. The amount of energy that's actually being provided to the Guam Power Authority would be negligible versus the cost of what it would be to generate that power through incineration. So I would just encourage perhaps that more studies should be looked at alternate types of waste disposal or recycling that would be feasible, could be economically feasible. Because if it's not, I mean, our people are complaining what they're paying now. Guam Solid Waste has already talked about increasing those fees, and then on top of that, another fee for incineration is going to be rather costly. So I'm just asking, perhaps as I mull over also my consideration in voting for your nomination, that you would be open to looking at alternatives that don't enter into the unfortunate politics and aggressive self-interest that some people and some companies choose to display, parading and masquerading as being, pro-environment or in the best interests of our people, because that to me is problematic, especially because I do have such extensive knowledge about the history of this particular company and their agenda here on Guam. So I just offer that.
Yes, Senator, you're 100% correct. I am 100% open to other alternatives. I just brought that particular one. There's many, there's solar. We already got solar farms in Guam. There's the wave, using the currents and the waves. There's multiple other options. It's a collaborative to every option that we can utilize, that we can actually see happen and get it done is what I'm looking at. If that waste to energy is one of them, then so be it. But there's definitely other options, and I will open 100% to other options as well. Thank you.
I wanted to ask Mr. Oro with regards to, because Guami-P primarily, its primary role, I mean, of course, it has the educational aspect, but Guami-P primarily is a regulatory agency to administer and enforce the environmental laws that we have. And you've been on the board for a period of time. How would you look at, as a board member, wanting to strengthen that role in our community? I mean, recognizing you have so much resource, so much personnel, but how can Guami-P, through your leadership on the board, exert a greater presence with regards to enforcing environmental laws here on Guam?
I think you offer really great critiques of the agencies and their, I guess and that's a critique I've hold too, is that EPA isn't very visible in our community and isn't an agency that we hear from often enough. And that's something that I wanted to take on as a board member initially, but I just really wanted to focus on learning about the inner workings and what the rules and regulations are. But I think forming campaigns from the board's perspective on education, and even with just the plastic bag ban, I was trying to get a countdown to ensure that the community was knowledgeable of when these deadlines are coming. And those are things that we could definitely work with different news outlets to have more presence in the media and more presence in the community. It could be a board initiative, or it could be something that we work with along closely with someone like Mr. Nick Lee and other people within the agency to have more of a visible presence in the community. And I like doing media work. I work with a lot of people who do like to do things like TikToks and use social media to bolster awareness. And I think that's something that could be done. Another thing that could be availed to the EPA, which I'm not sure has been done yet, is the use of service learners in the high schools to maybe do some of that media work as well.
Well, I certainly appreciate your response and your passion and your desire to help support your community and serving as a board member. I thank both of you for taking the time to respond to my questions, and also, for your public service. I think that's always to be commended and be recognized. So with that, thank you very much to the appointees, and thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to comment and also ask questions of the nominees for the Guami-P board. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Brown. Senator Taitekwi, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, for the opportunity and for those questions that you provided earlier. It was very thorough, and a lot of my questions were answered or asked and answered. So I greatly appreciate it. And of course, just being able to listen to Senator Brown, talk as well with regards to, what's happened in the past. A lot of things that were brought up, I think you're going to take into consideration. I mean, really take into consideration. Moñeka, I've known you since you're a graduate from high school and watched you grow into this beautiful woman and mother and an advocate for the environment. So I greatly appreciate you did not, go in another direction, which I know you can because you're very intelligent, that you can go into any field that you want, but greatly appreciate that you're staying in this direction for the environment. The only thing is that I have to say to both of you is that, politics has no business at EPA whatsoever. This is our environment we're talking about. Don't turn the blind eye at all. That's the only thing that I would really like you to please bring to the board. And I know you, Dave, oh my gosh, you're a man that will not hold back. And you say it like it is. You don't use like 50 million words that still people walk away not knowing what you said. You're clear, precise, and make it clean. My issue too with EPA is that all the work that the employees have done at EPA, all the research and initiatives that they put forward, they have a lot of great ideas, especially in this line of work. They have the background. And then we're finding out people are coming in and taking funding away from them to put somewhere else. I hope the two of you look at the zero waste bill that was introduced last term, and I'm hoping the good chairwoman would also introduce it again this time, because there was a lot of hard work put into that, the zero waste. And the funding came from, the revolving recycling fund. So it's so important that the lack of funding that EPA has, that whatever funding you do have stays with you. You know, the nonprofit organizations, they're out trying to find funding, you know, advocating and doing fundraisers, you know, and awareness programs, you know, as well as going after federal funds. But an account that was created, a fund that was created particularly for certain things to be taken away and used for something else, there's no room for that. And that's why I'm saying, don't turn a blind eye, and definitely politics has no room at EPA at this point. So please look into that. The proactive, Senator Brown brought that up. Let's be proactive. You know, I mean, it's like transparency and accountability is so thrown out there all the time. Well, proactive is also a word that's thrown all the time here and there, but it's never implemented. And I think EPA has moved and strived toward that proactiveness. But when you get other people coming in and taking the money away from them, then they have to start all over again, or all their initiatives and research will stop. There are great employees there at EPA, ones who could retire and leave, like Nick said, but they love our island just as much as you do, especially Moñeka, you know, the passion that you have. They too love our island and want to protect it. So let's give them the tools to do so over at EPA and allow them to do it. And as a board, you have that power. You oversee EPA. You decide who the director, deputy director is. You decide where the money goes to. So please, you know, take what we said today as something that can help you, a tool to use, or as you move forward in your new position, because I support the both of you, you know, and that's why I'm here today, to ensure that, to let you know that, thank you so much for stepping up to the plate. Thank you for doing all you're doing for our island. I wish you guys all the very best. And please know that my door is open anytime. If you have anything that you would like to speak to or talk about or ideas, I'd love to hear it, because I'm a big fan of EPA, you know, and I'd like to see it continue to do its very best, and given the tools to do that. So thank you again for stepping up to place. Moñeka, Dave, be safe. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Senator Taitigui and Senator Brown, for being at this hearing. And thank you to the nominees for stepping up to the plate, Ms. Miss De Oro and Mr. Dave Duenas. And thanks to Guami-P for your testimony and support, Nick Rupley and Arlene Afaji. Thank you for your time. And we will still receive testimonies up until, let me get the date, March 8th, 4 p.m. And it could be delivered to my office via email, office@senatorperez.org. It could be also, let's see, mailed at the Guam Congress Building. And so if there are no further testimonies or questions, the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research and Planning will adjourn this virtual confirmation hearing. The time is now 11:09 a.m. Masi, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Creative